You served your country with honor and dedication, but now you're on a different battleground. You're facing life outside the military and all the stressors that come with that. Today, we're going to be going through some of those stressors that might lead you to burnout. Stay tuned.
To be back on here and talk about military and veteran issues and ways forward after retiring from the military, from the service, because there is life after you take the uniform off. So what are we going to get into today there, John?
Yeah, we're going to talk about burnout. So you would think that once you retire and leave the military, that any burnout you might have experienced in the military while you were working your butt off, 60 hours a week and juggling family and juggling work and juggling everything else in between, you would think that that stops once you get out of the military. But really, there's a whole nother realm that you step into once you get past the military and get into civilian life. And that can quickly spiral down into some serious burnout. So we just want to go over some things today, talk about burnout, what it is, why it's important to understand this, and some ways to navigate around some of those stressors and things that can potentially throw you into a burnout spiral.
I'll give a little background on mine if we have some time here. For a long time, I have been putting in, 40, 50, 60 plus hours at work, and I was definitely getting burned out. And that's why we have such good leave benefits in the military, I think. You take leave when you need it, 2.5 days, I think, per month. And I found myself taking leave all the time, right? And not only on the weekends, taking time off, but also during the week. I just had to take time off, man. Burnout was becoming evident and it was taking over my life. And I had to find a way out of that life. And that's one of the big reasons why I decided to exit the military too. I figured, I'm getting paid, I have good benefits, but there's got to be a life outside of this 60 plus hour work week. So burnout was evident, but now as I transitioned out, as I am no longer in the service, actually life is pretty stress free. And I thought I was not going to be able to find that. I thought it was always going to be like a very much go, go, go lifestyle, even after the uniform. But I have time to be with the family now. I have time to myself. We got time to record podcasts, right? Have shows and all that. So it's life is good on the outside, but it is what you make of it. If you decide to choose a life that's always constantly go, 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 it's always going to be a burnout stage. You have to choose wisely on your way out. What do you think?
Yeah. Work stress can definitely get you down, and it can definitely get you into a point where that stress from work then bleeds out into your family life, into your personal relationships. And really it's not a good thing. It's like getting the flu, and then you get the flu and you bring it home, and then everybody else gets the flu around you, and then it kind of goes from there. So you definitely want to kind of take the flu medicine to keep yourself from getting the flu if you can. And if you do get the flu, you try to mitigate that with whatever you're going to mitigate it with, whatever kind of medicine. But really, yeah, you're going to experience the stress in service for sure. No matter what your job is, the military is not an easy job as people might think it is. There are some days where it's way easier than everybody else's job, but there are a lot more days where it's not, where you're working long hours, where you're working extra hours, where you're doing a lot of extra tasks that aren't necessarily your job and your job title. So, but then once you get out of the military, you get into a whole nother realm of things. Like you have to deal with a lot of things that we talk about in the show. Taxes, you have to deal with finding a house and figuring out where you want to live. You have to deal with getting your resume together, applying for jobs, going through that process if you're going to do that, go down that path. And so I think a lot of it comes from, in both situations, a lot of it comes from a lack of control, or not feeling like you have control of the situation completely. And you're never going to have 100% control.
Right.
But if you feel like you have very little say in your work, or very little say in your home life. It can get really frustrating really quick. And a lack of control can make you feel helpless, disengaged, and it can contribute really severely to burnout. So, one of the things that I would recommend, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree on this. One of the things I would recommend is being able to figure out how to say no more than you say yes. And that doesn't mean telling people to go piss off, but basically
It could include
declining.
that.
You could include that. You could tell people to piss off. I don't know if it's going to help your situation or not, but declining a lot of their requests for your time. And that's really simply being able to say no, or being able to give somebody a really quick kind of, hey, no, I've already got things booked out. You have to think about it kind of this way. And you might have seen this or read this in some books or something like that, but you have to think about it like, if I had to stop everything I'm doing and do this thing that this person is asking me to do tomorrow, would I still say yes? And if the answer is no, then the answer is also no if they're asking you to do it 3 or 4 months from now. Just because they're asking you to do it in the future doesn't mean it's something you can commit to half-heartedly, and then 2 months down the road you're stressing about it because you actually have to show up and actually have to be there and do the thing and perform and whatever you got to do with it. So really just being
Yeah.
able to say no to 90% of things, especially when they take away time from yourself, from your family, and from the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I found myself after I took the uniform off, after I EAS'd, it was like a breath of fresh air almost, right? I was looking for a job, but I didn't really need to at that point in time because I was receiving, my terminal leave pay, because I'm technically on leave at that point. And I found myself kind of in this free state where I didn't really need to agree to things. I didn't really need to say yes to things, right? And I completely agree. Like I was the no guy. Like, can you make it here at this time? Nah, not really. Doesn't fit in my schedule. I was in my own world and I was okay with that. So I completely agree. Say no more often. It's fine. If it's something you really want to do and if it's your schedule, say yes, whatever. If it's not something that's in your plans, you don't really want to do it after you retire and you have the ability, you're financially set, you're good. Hey, feel free to say no. It's such a freeing feeling, man. I completely agree. Along with this burnout thing, dude, I found myself bringing it home a lot.
Hmm.
I don't know how you felt about it, but I was going to work. I was working these long hours, and it's intense work because I was working some military justice stuff, right? Doing investigations and things, researching, and it was heavy. And I found myself coming home and just wanted to be on my own, like I was not neglecting the family, but not as involved in things, right? And I knew that at some point in time, I needed to make a change because things were not going to go well. My kids were growing. I wanted to be more involved in their lives, and I really knew that things needed to change quick. So that was partly one of the reasons why I decided to retire. And then once I told my chain of command that, hey, look, I am going to retire. I'm dropping my papers, my retirement papers. It was almost like another freeing feeling, right? Because I'm training this other guy to do the work on my way out. So he's kind of doing the heavy lifting. I'm still supervising, but they're also giving me the time to go to my medical appointments to do what I need to do on the way out. So I already started feeling that sense of relief, so it wasn't so much burnout. I was still helping a little bit, but I definitely felt it after I dropped my papers. Like, man, this is what it feels like. I'm no longer the go-to guy. Now I'm training this other guy to do that. And, I'm kind of on my own program a little bit, and I'm still kind of in that realm of being on my own program. Like I can choose to have a job or I can choose not to have a job. I don't have to say yes at all times. Yes, sir, no, sir, etc. I'm happy. I'm in a happy state and I'm more stress free than I was while I was in uniform, to be honest.
actually 2 or 3, maybe even more years out before I actually retired, I actually set up a thing in my inbox, and it was an out of office notification. And I know I got shit from it, from everybody, from the command, from my boss. And I told them, like, look, I have to set boundaries. I have to draw a line in the sand, and I have to set expectations. And so this is a good point that I kind of want to bring up, is unrealistic expectations. By setting up this inbox notification for people, and it was for everybody. It wasn't just for a specific person or a specific group of people. It was for every single body. And it was basically like, I check my email between these hours. And if you can't reach me between these hours and it's really an emergency, here's my personal cell phone number.
Yep.
And other than that, I'm not checking my email 24 hours a day. I'm not sitting behind my desk checking my email all day long. That I set the expectation that they shouldn't expect for me to immediately respond to their emails unless it was like some kind of really somebody's on fire email, or somebody calls me or texts me and says, hey, we've got this emergency that needs to be taken care of. But other than that, I basically put up a wall between myself and all the unmitigated emergencies that were coming in my office, in my inbox. And by doing that, I freed up a ton of time, and I freed up a ton of mental space in the meantime. And that really, it gave me the space to be able to also do my work and get my things done. And like I said, it was me setting myself up for retirement many years before I got there. And a lot of people didn't get it and didn't understand it, but you have to set those expectations, and you have to set those boundaries between yourself and the rest of the world. And a lot of times those boundaries will protect you, not only you, but they'll protect you and your family and your time with your family. So that's one important thing, is set expectations, make sure they're realistic expectations, and then set those boundaries based on those expectations so that you're not overstepping your own
Right.
boundaries with other people, and you're not letting other people step over your boundaries. You'll physically fight to the death if somebody tries to encroach your space physically, but mentally you let everybody in, right? You let Facebook in, you let TikTok in, you let your boss in, coworkers in. You have an open door policy, which means anybody can come in all the time and talk to you whenever they want to, and that takes away gradually a lot of your time. So
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, man. Because if you don't set those boundaries, you're going to start drowning. So I'll tell you, I worked with a guy who, and he's a good friend of mine, who would set this time frame up throughout his day, right? So he would only answer questions from people within the office after 1300, after 1 p.m. Right. So from the morning to about lunchtime, around noon, it would just be checking his emails, reviewing documents, reviewing, investigations, whatever needed to be reviewed from that week. And then 1300 to about 1630, 1700 to 5 o'clock or so, at the end of the workday, he would have his open door policy. If you came and knocked on his door prior to 1 o'clock, he'd turn your way and say, come see me after, or email me to get on my calendar, please. And if it's, unless it's something hot that needed to be done, right?
right.
But I really appreciated that manner of, that time management that he had, right? That restrictive time management, because he was effective in his work. He gave time to his people, and he also had time to not burn himself out and make sure that he gave his whole morning to whatever needed to be done for the command or for the mission, right? Afterwards, he would just concentrate on what people had, hot items, etc. So open door policy. So you have to set those boundaries, or else you're just going to start drowning in all the stuff that you have to do. And I learned that the hard way. It was many, many years that I was trying to juggle everything at one time. And I read something years ago about what's the term that they use? Not multifunction. It was
Multitasking.
multitasking. There you go, multitasking. I don't know why multitasking. So that is multitasking is meant for like computer systems, right? It's you have different things running in the background. You're multitasking all this stuff. And it's a little tough for a human to do that because humans can only really focus on one thing at a time. I know it's hard for me to focus on anything at a time, right? But if I didn't have my planner, if I didn't have my logbook and stuff here, I don't know where I'd be. But setting boundaries, making sure that you have things in place, not overburdening yourself with multiple tasks at one time, that's the key, man. Because if not, then you're going to burn yourself out easy. Hopefully you have enough leave on the book so you can take some time off, man. I always kept a good amount of leave on the books for that reason alone, because I'm like, I would get burned out so easily, man. It was terrible. But rely on your planners, rely on your calendar, rely on the time management if you don't want to burn yourself out. That's a couple things that I learned over my career.
Yeah, and that multitasking thing is another one that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. It's really just, there's a saying that goes, if you chase two rabbits, you catch no rabbits, or you catch one, no rabbits, basically. Which is saying if you're chasing too many things, you're not going to catch up with all of those things that you're chasing. And aside from, and shout out to all the women out there in the audience, all the women out there around the world, since it's National Women's Day, the 8th of March, and I believe the whole month is dedicated to women across the world. So shout out to everybody out there. So aside from women who are supposedly able to multitask, or at least that's what I've heard from multiple women, including my wife. Aside from women, we're just not built to multitask. We're not built to take on more than we can chew. And I think in this day and age of fast-paced technology, everything is instant on and at your fingertips all the time. We tend to think that we can just take on a whole bunch of things and be able to finish all of those things. And really you can, but you have to think about the output on the other end of doing the work. You're not going to be able to dedicate 100% of your effort and your mental capacity to 7 tasks at one time. You can only focus on one, maybe 2 things at a time, but I would say 1, honestly. And so in that thread, being able to, again, say no to things, but being able to understand when you're taking on too much responsibility. And it happens, again, once you get out of the service, you kind of open up this portal. You open up this time portal where you've basically got rid of a whole bunch of things that you had to do and a whole bunch of responsibilities that you had, and they all kind of go away. And now you're just kind of left with this void of time. And you've got all this time at your hands, and you're like, oh, now I can start filling my bucket again with things that I want to do. And I would just say, be careful to not overfill it, right? You can take on projects and go and do volunteer work and go get another job and things like that, but don't fill the bucket back up to the point where it's at capacity or over capacity and leaking water over the top. Because you can easily go back down that path and easily find yourself in that same kind of treadmill of just having too many things to do and not enough time to complete everything that you want to do. So,
dude, that's where I am right now. Exactly what you mentioned is where I am right now, dude. I'll tell you, because there's something always floating in my head, right? And I have these little notebooks everywhere, one for projects, one for, daily taskers, they're lying around everywhere. And I have so many things flowing through my head that it's like, I can't concentrate on one thing. And that's my resolution for this year, was concentrate on one thing. So that way I don't burn myself out. So that way my cup doesn't overflow and I just cannot complete anything because I'm concentrating on everything at one time. That's where I am. And that's my downfall, I think, is having too many things going on at one time. The fact that I know I cannot effectively multitask every single thing, but I try to, and it never works out. So I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that's exactly where I am. between, and I love the podcast and I love the show. And I'm like, I want to concentrate on this. And I do. At the same time, I got the book. At the same time, I got, baseball practice, and I got this and that and everything going on. And I'm like, it seems like things are starting to overflow again, and it's not a work thing anymore because
Right.
work, I'm not in a supervisory role right now, and I'm okay with that. And it's not that work is overbearing or anything like that. It's just everything else that I'm trying to fill the time with now. Like I had so much extra time. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do that, and I just need to time it out, every few months, from this time to this time, I'll concentrate on this. From this time to this time, I'll concentrate on that, etc. So, yeah. And there's something I found on Facebook here. It was a question. It was, how do you prevent burnout and maintain a healthy work-life balance after leaving the military? And there was a ton of comments on here, and I even commented on it myself by mentioning that, you need to find a purpose other than work, 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 because if you constantly chase that carrot, then, things are never going to work out for you. You're going to be back in that same rut that you were in when you were getting burned out. If you're chasing titles and accolades and salaries and stuff like that, you need to focus on other things, family, hobbies. What did you want to do that you never got a chance to do while you were in uniform? That's the way I thought of it. I wanted to do this. I wanted to concentrate on writing a book. So I have time for that now, and I'm making time
Mm-hmm.
for it now. Whereas when I was in uniform, I was always coming home tired, and I just kind of grouchy, didn't really want to concentrate and give the proper time to like actually writing an extra page in the book. So this book is like years in the making, and now I'm actually like knocking out chapter after chapter after chapter. Not that they're good chapters, I still have to go back and edit this stuff, man. It's just like whatever flows from the brain, it's happening. But yeah, I mean, what would you say in your time after the military? How are you living a healthy work-life balance?
I guess I'm kind of the poster boy for this sort of being able to balance life outside of the military after retirement. I guess I am. I wouldn't consider myself that, but that's what people have told me. And
Give us
it
the knowledge,
really
John. Give us knowledge.
it boils down to a couple things. One of the things that I'll definitely point out is the thing that you had mentioned about focusing on one task. And there's really a ton of ways to do that. There's a great book called the One Thing, and what it basically talks about is being able to eliminate all the other things. So picking the one thing that's the most important out of all the things on your list of things to do, that either eliminates those things or makes those things irrelevant, right? So if you had to pick from a list of 10 things of what's the most important task on that thing, and you focus on just that task, it has to be the task that also makes the other tasks irrelevant or non-important, or maybe even fulfills some of the other secondary side quests that you have listed as tasks to do that are your priorities. Because if you have more than one priority, then you have zero priorities. So really just picking that one thing, and it takes a little work. It takes time to figure it out, and it takes time to be able to understand how that works and get your brain wrapped around that concept. But for me, the work-life balance thing is really, and again, I've started to fill my bucket with things. I've taken on board of director roles at a couple of organizations. I've taken on a lot of volunteer work, which is multiple hours a week. I've taken on doubling down on the podcast and doing this thing, which really takes a lot of time and effort, dedicated, focused time and effort. Not to mention, a quiet room and a quiet house and the dog's not barking and all that stuff. But really, it's really me being intentional about my time as soon as I wake up. So as soon as I get up in the morning, I go straight to a cup of caffeine, which maybe is not the best thing, but that's what I do. And I go straight into
Yeah.
reading three different books, one page from each book, and they're basically a 365-day calendar type thing. So I get one page of each of those books. I sit down and I read an audiobook that's The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And that book is spaced out over a 10 to 11 month period if you read it the way it's prescribed in the book. Of course, it's a fictional kind of book, but I've incorporated that into my daily routine, morning and evening. So in the morning, I get up, I read those things. I set the intention. I empty my email inbox, which is usually and hit delete. And like 99% of the emails that I get just go straight to the deleted box. And I could just, filter those out and get rid of them. But I feel this ephemeral kind of thing that when I delete those 10 or 12 emails or whatever it happens to be, it makes me feel good. It's like one of the first tasks that I get accomplished of the day is,
It's like a freeing feeling, huh?
yeah, you zero
Yeah.
out the inbox, and it takes zero effort. And it also forces me to understand, like, don't get trapped by the tagline in the email and want to click on it and want to go in and read it. Like, I just go through and delete them. And usually 90% of them are garbage anyway. But I keep a nice stack of garbage emails in there so that I can go through and delete them every day just for that purpose. It sounds kind of weird, but it makes me feel good.
That's
It
how you
makes me feel
work.
like I've accomplished something really, really hard for a lot of people to accomplish. And I've done it in a
Yeah.
matter of, 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then I go about my day, and I basically, we've talked about it, but write a lot of things down, things that I need to get done. And then I intentionally force people to get on my calendar, whether it's my wife, whether it's somebody that I'm doing a project with, whether it's doing this podcast thing. I force it on my calendar, and I make sure that I share that calendar with the people who are relevant to that task, so that if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't come up in my purview and I don't see it and I don't pay attention to it. And those couple things is what really keeps me on track and allows me to free up hours of time during the day, because I know I've got this thing going at 4 to 5 p.m., but the rest
Hmm.
of the day is free. So if anything comes up, if I got to go take the dog to the vet, if I got to go get groceries, if I got to go cook some food, like, all that stuff is available for me to then spend time doing, because I know I don't have something scheduled for that time.
Yeah. And that calendar thing is huge too, because my mind works like that. My day works like that. Like when things are not on my calendar, I feel a little out of place, right? When we have something going on with the family, kids, I even have like family time schedule on there from like 7 to 8:30, when the kids go to sleep. I tend to shut down the Wi-Fi so that way we're not on the computers and the games and stuff all the time. And most of the time, it's family time, talking about your day, reading, maybe having dinner together, maybe just spending time with the wife, or I don't know, it could be anything, playing games, reading. But I purposely schedule that stuff into my calendar because I know if I don't, it'll never happen. So my calendar is full of just timestamps, times that I have white space in there. I have time to like read. I have time to write. I got time for workouts. If I don't schedule the workouts, they don't happen. I need to make sure that I'm intentional with that stuff. It's now more than ever, because now that I'm retired and I'm outside of a battle rhythm, that I usually have when I was in uniform, I need to keep up with that stuff. I guess that's one thing that I'm keeping from my time in the service was having these calendar things in my life. If I don't schedule something like from 5 to 6 in the morning, get up and at least go walk, run, or something, or do some kind of PT, then it probably won't happen. Then I'll just sleep in, and that's not good, especially as I'm getting older later on in life. After you retire, you got to take care of your body now more than ever, because
Yeah.
what happens is you're getting a retirement check. If something happens to you, that stuff is gone unless you have some kind of backup, right? So now more than ever, after you leave the service, you have to take care of your body and your mind and all that. And you have to make sure that you incorporate these things into your calendar. So never lose that. Never. That's one thing that works for me. And I'm like the messiest person that you can find, but it doesn't seem like that. There's a lot going on up here, but it doesn't seem like that because I'm very regimented in the way I like to do things. Right. So yeah, and you got to give me you have to give me your tips on having an empty email box, because I look at mine, it's got like 13,000, and it's terrible, dude. It's terrible. I look at it, I'm like, I just close it out. I'm like, I don't even want to look at this crap. Well, I have like one of those catch-all email addresses, and whenever I want to sign up for something, I sign up there, and I can never find anything now. And it's getting to the point where it's overwhelming and everything's going to spam, and I don't even want to look at that thing. But as far as like the other ones that I normally use for like work or, those are pretty much empty at all times, and I like the thing that you mentioned about reading. I'm not like you. I can't read 3 books at a time or, back to back. I have to concentrate on one. And I do listen to like audiobooks on the way to work and the way back from work, and podcasts and things like that. And I usually set aside maybe like half an hour, 45 minutes to sit down at the end of the night and read something. I usually follow that up with some, an old fashioned or something that I'll make myself at night. But yeah, if it's not in my calendar, it will never happen. If my calendar was free, I would just be sitting there staring at the wall. Like, no, nothing going on. There's nothing happening. It's essential.
Yeah, and I'll throw in one more that I think is pretty important, and that's aligning your values. So having conflicting values, whether it's personal values, beliefs versus your job's values. And you can think of your job's values as like they have on the landing page of most companies, they have like the vision and they have like the values and what we stand for. That's kind of the company values. And I'd like to think of this as, I don't have a formal like setup thing that says these are my values, but I like to think of it that way. Like if somebody was coming to John McConnell homepage to figure out who I am or what I'm about,
Right.
that I can have those 1 or 2 blurbs up there that says, this is my core values. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. And just kind of maybe just either sitting down or just having a little thought process in your brain about it on your own and trying to figure out what exactly are your values. Because I know we all have values that are pronounced in what we say and how we act and what we do and what we think and what we believe. But if you ever try to sit down and actually like put those down on paper or put that down into a nice succinct paragraph, almost like writing a summary for a job resume, right? If you really sit down and just kind of think about that for a minute and do that, and you can see where your values will line up with other things that you're doing or other things that you may have conflicts with. And
Right.
you might find out that the conflict is not because of the thing itself, but it's the value conflict that you're having between yourself and that thing, right? Myself included, especially in the military. There are some things in the military that go on that I didn't necessarily agree with, right? And there was always some sort of value conflict, especially when it came to leadership, how people were managing people's schedules and things like that, giving soldiers and their troops and their the people that are under them that they're managing and they're leading, not giving them proper time off or not seeing when they need to take a break or not understanding that there's other stuff outside of the military, things like that. So usually, not always, but usually you'll find that if you have a conflict in values, then you'll have a conflict that will then lead you down the path of some sort of burnout, not necessarily like full on burnout.
That those things align. And I mean, that goes hand in hand with communication, right? You have to communicate with your chain of command. You have to make sure that you all are on the same page with a lot of things. If you're not, then there's going to be a miscommunication, a loss of communication, etc. Things are not going to align, and that could essentially affect your life, your work, etc. Things are not going to be nice for you at the end of the day. Yeah, completely agree, dude. And that was a big reason why I chose to communicate with my chain of command, like my boss, every single day. There's not one day, several times a day where I pop in his office, hey, sir, ma'am, whoever, got a quick update. And, at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, just to open it up with the mission for the day, close it up with what was done and our way forward for tomorrow or the rest of the week. So I made sure that I did that just so we stay in constant communication, just so we know what the battle rhythm is for that day or the following day. Yeah, no, good stuff, man. Good stuff, John. I appreciate you coming up with that too. Let me see what else we got here on the. I'm looking at the Facebook stuff right now and just coming up with some, or seeing what people have mentioned, how they maintain a healthy work-life balance. There's a ton of comments on here, and it's good to see the perspective. A lot of stuff is, spend time with family, concentrate on your hobbies, creating boundaries. I know we talked a little bit about that too. Moving somewhere affordable so you don't feel like you're overburdened with just having to work, just so you can pay off your house or your apartment or wherever you live and continue that lifestyle. Maybe even backing up on the expensive lifestyle. If you have, if you're used to like an overly expensive lifestyle while you're in the military, and you may want to use that Excel document that we uploaded on the military retirement group, and just to kind of see what your life will be like after you leave the service. You may want to look at backing it up a little bit so you don't actually burn yourself out and have to work that many hours or that hard just so you can keep up that lifestyle. So that might be something that we look at too. And
shout out to Jerome Dingle for giving us that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jerome.
Yeah, shout out to Jerome. He's the one that provided that Excel document. We just had him on the live stream this past week. A very knowledgeable person, and he was the one who sent us that document. It basically shows what you're making in service and shows what you potentially could be making out of service and how you maintain that lifestyle. So one thing that I'll throw out there too is I watch a lot of videos of these older folks, maybe like in their 90s and things like that, who, when asked what do they regret, when they were younger in life, that what do they regret now not doing or doing during their whole life? And a lot of them come out and say, they regret working so hard and not focusing on things that they love and the people that they love, things like that. And that's one thing to keep in mind too. If it's always work, what do you have to look back on? Yeah, you might have created something great, a company, but you've put everything else, your hobbies, your passions, and the people you love on the back burner, and you don't want to live with that regret when you get older. That's why a lot of us focus on, John, you focus on the podcast, your family, traveling, and, just having a good work-life balance. I focus on my family. I focus on hobbies, the baseball thing, the podcast, the show, things that I love. I don't so much focus on my work, though it's there. My 9 to 5, my daily job, it's there, but it's not that stressor in life anymore. So I can leave at 3:30 and continue on with my life, So that's one thing that we need to look at, I think, as we get older, as we transition out of the military. What will make you happy, and how do you incorporate that more into your life rather than burning yourself out with just work? Because we don't live forever. We have limited time on this earth. How are you going to make the most of it?
Yep. And I think that's a great place to kind of wrap things. And I'll give the audience just a couple things that, or some action items that we would want you to go ahead and and take away. I'll give a couple of mine, and I'll give you a minute
Yeah,
to give a couple of yours as well. But
absolutely.
a couple things. So first thing I would say is go into your phone, go into your laptop, pull up your calendar, and write down every single appointment that you have this week on that calendar. Set up calendar appointments for each one of those things, and make sure that you, if they involve your wife or your husband, send them the link to that calendar, invite them as a person on that calendar, put them on that specific calendar event. And even the things that they aren't a part of, if they're your wife or your husband, make sure that you tag them on every single one of those events so that they have visibility of what you're doing and you have visibility of what you're doing. And just try that out this week and see how it works for you. And let us know in the comments, in the Facebook group, wherever, if you've done this and how it's worked out for you, and give us some feedback on that. The second thing I'll say is, if you have a debt that you can pay off, no matter how small it is, if it's an extra subscription that you turned on a year ago or 2 years ago that you've completely forgot about, that you don't even use anymore, go find that $10 or $20 subscription and shut it off this week. Just go find it, spend some time, figure out what it is that you're spending your money on, go through your bank statement and see like, oh, well, there's $27 going out every month for this thing that I don't even know what it is anymore. Go find out what that is, figure out what it is, and figure out a way to turn it off. And if you can do that on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis now, to the time that you actually get to the point of retirement, I guarantee you will free up a ton of cash, which will then give you a little bit more security in your finances. You may not get debt free, but you will get on the path and you will start to build the habit of trying to become more debt free conscious, or debt free woke. Let's call it debt free woke. And then the third and final thing I will say is, take some time to potentially reach out to a caregiver home or an old folks home. You brought up a great point, and I'll just emphasize that a little bit further. If you can take a day, 5 hours, 6 hours, and just go to a nursing home, go spend it with your grandmother or your great grandmother or grandfather, and sit with them for 5 or 6 hours and just intentionally talk about things like what they regret, what they did with their life, how they spent their childhood. Ask them a bunch of questions about life and see what their perspective is. And that will give you a better perspective on your own life for sure.
Oh, that's a great one, man. Yeah, I have yet to do that, and that just brings up an old memory of me wishing that I talked to my grandfather a little bit more about his life, because after a while they just tend to forget, right? But
Yep.
I know a lot of the time, he loved spending time with his family, so that's one of the things that I know that he cherished. And I'll follow that up with three things that I think will improve everybody's work life balance, and I know it has improved mine. Is number one, get rid of stuff. That is huge. Since I moved into this new house, I have gotten rid of like 50% of the things that we owned, sold it, gave it away, donated it, etc. Getting rid of crap that we don't need, that is constantly inhibiting our life and around. It's like a mental clutter, and I've been somewhat of a hoarder all these years because I like to hold on to like military memorabilia and pictures and all these different things. I just acquire things, and it was my wife that kind of opened my eyes. Like, look, there's just a weight lifted off your shoulder once you start getting rid of things, and everything is visually appealing to you. Like, how good do we feel when we go on vacation away from our home sometimes, and you walk into like a hotel or an Airbnb that has minimal things around, and you're like, it feels great, right? That's what my house looks like that now. It's like minimal things tucked away. Anything we don't need, we put in the garage or stored away, for the winter or the summer or whatever. So that's one thing, is getting rid of things that you don't really need. Another thing, I think you touched on it a little bit, was getting out of debt, especially before you leave the military. that is huge. You don't want all this debt following you outside in your next life when you get out, because it's just another burden on you. It's just such a freeing feeling when you have nothing, when you owe no money to anybody. When you get out, it's such a freeing feeling. And I used to give classes, financial classes to my Marines when I was younger or not younger, but in the last couple of years, because I've personally been debt free for about 6-7 years. And the only real debt we have right now is this house that we just bought, we're just paying it off. And it is just a freeing feeling, man. You have your things like your subscriptions, your streaming subscriptions, you have your cell phone bill. Those are all recurring things. You can incorporate that into your budget. But how good is it when you don't have any more student loans, when you don't owe $10,000, $20,000 for a credit card, or like have $500 monthly bills for cars and stuff like that? Pay that off as fast as possible. And you only have one thing really, is your house or your rent, your monthly rent. It's such a freeing feeling, man. I cannot tell you. And lastly, cell phone stuff. We look at our cell phones so often that I'll show you here on camera. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but that's my screen. Let's see. And I'll read it to you. It says routine: wake up early, exercise daily, drink water, read daily, do better than yesterday. It's all black. And then when I open up my phone, that's my screen. There's nothing on there. I mean, there's something on the next screen, right? But
Right.
There's nothing on the main screen when I open it up, because I don't want to have that overwhelming feeling of 100 apps in my face at all times. It is such a calming thing when I open it up and I have that routine as a reminder, because how often do we pick up our phones and look at it? It's a reminder every day that I need to wake up the next day early, that I need to exercise every single day in order to, improve my mind, my body, to drink water every day, to read daily and to do better than I did yesterday. Constant reminder. So I don't know if maybe we can upload this wallpaper somewhere to our page or something like that and make it accessible to everybody. And at the bottom, I don't know you can't really see it, but I physically made this wallpaper, and at the bottom it says, if found, call my wife's number, if somebody finds this. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how I go through my daily routine. And that is a constant reminder. So if anybody out there is looking for something very easy to incorporate into their life as a reminder to do better than yesterday, create a simple wallpaper on like Canva or something like that. Put it on your phone, and every time you pick it up or tap it, that's your reminder right there.
This is my reminder.
Like that. I might have to add that on there. My sixth one, get shit done. I like it.
That's the only reminder I need. Just get shit done. Doesn't matter what you do, just get shit done.
Yeah, I like that.
No. Yeah. No, that's it. We want to thank everybody. We hope you got some good tips and some good advice out of this podcast. We want to make sure that if you do take some of our advice, or if you do put some of those things in action, let us know. Reach out to us. Let us know. Send us an email. Drop it in a comment. Send it out to the world on Facebook or wherever you happen to find us, LinkedIn, wherever, and let us know. If you want some wallpapers, let us know that too. We could come up with wallpapers all day long. That's too
Absolutely.
easy. We can do that.
Yeah.
And for everybody else out there, thank you for listening in. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for spending time with us and allocating. Hopefully it's on your calendar to listen to the podcast. If it's not, you should put that on your calendar as well. But thank you for spending your time with us and giving us all of your time. And if you need to find us, we are everywhere on the internet. We're all over all the podcast platforms, and we're also on Wreaths Across America on Wednesday evenings. You can catch us there. So thank you again.
Yeah, if you want good information too, just jump on the Facebook group, the Military Retirement Group. A lot of good information there, a lot of good files uploaded for anybody who's transitioning out from the military to civilian life.
That's right. And if you want to catch Victor's documenting of his last year in the military, his last year of service. You can check that out on the Green Logbook. Always trying to support back and forth. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you later.
All right. Out here.